Once, in a small town shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere, there lived a boy named Nico. He was an inquisitive child who never missed an opportunity to explore the world around him. The whole town was known for its underground catacombs, mysterious passages that stretched underground for several kilometers. One day, after learning about the legend of the missing boy in the underground catacombs, Nico decided to go in search of him. His friends warned him that these places were dangerous and no one knew what might be waiting there. But Nico did not listen to their advice and decided to go into the dark depths. He collected all the necessary equipment: lanterns, cards with labyrinths of catacombs, a compass and walkie-talkies for communication with the outside world. Armed with audacity and determination, Nico descended into the cave that opened access to the catacombs. With every step he took down, the atmosphere became more gloomy and frightening. The sound of the wind, the creaking of ancient stones and its reflection from the walls, all this added goosebumps to his back. But Nico didn't give up. He moved deeper and deeper, crossing halls and tunnels, until he noticed a strange footprint on the floor. He was sure that these were the tracks of the missing boy. Nico's heart beat faster, and he hurried after the tracks. Continuing his desperate journey after the tracks of the missing boy, Nico suddenly felt the ground begin to tremble under his feet. A loud rumble warned him of the impending danger. Large stones began to fall from the ceiling, blocking the way to the exit. Nico was trapped among the ruins and hopeless darkness. He began to panic, his heart was pounding wildly, and his breathing became difficult. The air in the catacombs became increasingly rotten and polluted, making him feel a terrible lack of oxygen. He was running around senselessly, looking for at least some way to get out. Suddenly, a faint echo of children's laughter came from the darkness. It was the voice of the missing boy, which sounded ghostly and distorted. Nico was intimidated and confused. He couldn't figure out where the sound was coming from and who or what was behind these sinister jokes. His heart was beating so fast that he was afraid it would jump out of his chest. Suddenly, faint torches lit up around him, and the corridors of the catacombs lit up with a ghostly light. Nico realized that he was not alone in this place. Something or someone was watching him. All his courage and determination gradually left him, and he realized that his life was hanging by a thread. The walls of the catacombs began to move, and disfigured figures and shadows emerged from them, distorted by sparkling eyes. They were the ghosts of missing children who suffered in these underground depths. Nico, completely distraught with horror, began to beat on the stone walls, trying to find a way out. His fists and legs were becoming more and more emaciated and bleeding, but he didn't stop. Despair seized him, and he felt that consciousness was leaving him. Suddenly, everything turned black and Nico lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself on the floor of a dark underground passage. His body was scarred and sore from numerous bruises. He realized that he had been in a breathless state and briefly retreated from the brink of life and death. It was completely dark around him, and only the faint light of the torches that were left burning burst out of the corridors. Nico realized that he had to find a way out of these damned catacombs before he finally lost his strength and died here. He got to his feet, barely restraining the pain, and moved forward, focusing on the faint light reflections. His legs moved slowly and awkwardly, but he didn't give up. It seemed to him that time slowed down, and the catacombs became more and more gloomy and creepy. When Nico was already beginning to accept the idea that he would never get out of this place alive, he heard a faint sound of distant noise. It was a sound from outside, something like footsteps and voices. Nico stopped anxiously, listening to the noise. The sound seemed unnatural, and the air around him was filled with a dense atmosphere. The footsteps grew louder, and ghostly figures began to loom out of the darkness. They were dressed in disheveled clothes and emitted a dim light. Some of them were holding hands, as if trying to keep their last connection with reality. Their faces expressed bitterness, suffering and overwhelming longing. Nico realized in horror that these were the souls of the missing children, lost in these gloomy catacombs. They came to warn him, to warn him that these dark spaces do not forgive mistakes and are eager to devour another soul. He retreated, trying to escape from this terrifying scene, but the walls of the catacombs turned out to be impenetrable. He was trapped in this paranormal trap, caught in a net between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The ghostly figures were getting closer, their eyes shone with an eerie light, and there was an unspeakable pain and longing in their voices. Nico understood that his fate was sealed, that he would become another damned soul in these damned catacombs. Nico, a day later, was discovered and extracted from the catacombs. His exhausted and wounded body was taken to the nearest hospital. When he came to, he was surrounded by medical staff and relatives, waiting to hear his story about what happened to him in those gloomy dungeons. Nico struggled up in bed and began to tell his story. He described his fears, panic and hope that gripped him inside the catacombs. He talked about ghostly figures, the souls of missing children who became his companions in this gloomy place. When Nico reached the point where he lost consciousness, his voice began to tremble. He spoke about the black darkness that surrounded him and the feeling that his life was hanging by a thread. He told about how suddenly his consciousness returned, and he woke up on the floor of an underground passage. The medical staff listened to his story with surprise and bewilderment. To them, it sounded like an incredible story, mixed with the effects of panic and loss of consciousness. However, some of those present began to discuss possible explanations for these events. There were those who believed that Nico simply experienced a strong psychological stress and suffered hallucinations due to lack of oxygen in the catacombs. Others suggested that exposure to a dark and mystical environment could cause paranormal phenomena affecting the perception of Nico. Nico himself could not find an unambiguous explanation for what had happened. There were elements in his story that seemed real to him, but he was also aware that they could be products of his imagination, distorted by fear and panic. Thus, Nico's story remained a mystery to many, causing interest and controversy. But no matter what happened in those catacombs, Nico remained greatly shaken and exhausted by these events. His physical and emotional wounds healed slowly, but the memories of that paranormal night will always remain with him. You have just penetrated into the wonderful world of mysticism and horror on the Mr. Scary Stories channel. With each video, you get closer to solving the mysteries and encounter the most creepy stories. Our channel offers you to immerse yourself in the atmosphere of the paranormal and enjoy exciting stories. We strive to provide you with only the best quality content and incredible visual effects so that every story comes to life in front of you. We take care of your adrenaline and try to surprise you every week with new horror movies. If you haven't subscribed to the Mr. Scary Stories channel yet, then it's time to do it right now. Click the subscribe button to not miss a single mystical story. Join our community of brave explorers who are ready to plunge into the darkness and reveal the most terrible secrets. Thank you for choosing our Mr. Scary Stories channel. Subscribe, like and share videos with friends. Together we can continue our journey in the world of horror and mysticism. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and leave a comment about which story captivated you the most. We are waiting for you on our Mr. Scary Stories channel.